Welcome to the Dopply English podcast. This is your cozy go-to space where improving your English feels natural, using real-life conversations. I'm Mia.
And I'm Leo.
Great to have you with us today, everyone. In this episode, we are diving into a B2 level topic that touches all of us: bad habits. We'll talk about why they hold such a tight grip on us and why fighting them constantly sometimes makes them pull even harder. But first, let's be totally honest. Have you ever stared at your phone, thought, do not click that notification, yet your hand did it anyway? Mia, tell me I'm not alone here.
Oh, Leo, exposing my secrets right at the beginning? Not fair.
I'm not exposing you at all. I'm just analyzing how our minds work.
Fine, I'll admit it. Last night, I looked straight at my hand, watched my fingers hovering over the screen, and literally muttered, "Step away from the app. You don't need this right now. Stay strong."
Wait, you were actually holding a negotiation with your own fingers?
I was giving them a very strict talking to.
And let me guess, did they cooperate?
Not even a little bit. They launched the app instantly.
And that is precisely the core of our discussion today. Your logical mind shouts, stop, but the habitual routine replies, too late. The action is already done.
And what frustrates me most is that I wasn't even enjoying it. I was just mindlessly scrolling through feeds without any real purpose.
A lot of our listeners are probably nodding along right now. You recognize that a behavior isn't beneficial, but during that critical second, the habit feels way more dominant than your best intentions. Perhaps you're listening to us right now thinking about your own patterns, whether it's late-night snacking, hitting the snooze button 3 times, skipping your daily English practice, or watching just one more video because of a cliffhanger.
And today, we aren't here to give you generic advice like, just try harder. We want to look closely at what actually happens inside our psychology, gently and logically. Transforming a habit isn't about beating yourself up until you change.
Exactly. By the time we finish this chat, you'll see why bad habits carry so much weight, why aggressive resistance can backfire, and how making minimal, steady shifts can clear a smoother path forward.
Plus, make sure to stick around for our freshly upgraded word tour near the end. We won't just run through vocabulary definitions. We are going to break the terms down, look at their structural forms, see how they operate in actual sentences, and guide you on how to use them effortlessly when discussing choices, slip-ups, self-discipline, and new beginnings.
We want to take you from a stage of, I recognize this word, to a stage where you can confidently say, I can actively use this word in conversation. If you're already finding this valuable, take a quick second to hit the like button and subscribe to the Dopply English podcast. It really motivates us to keep creating these calm, practical English episodes for you.
Before we move forward, jump into the comments and tell us truthfully, what is one automatic action you do even after promising yourself you wouldn't? Is it checking social media, opening messages out of boredom, delaying your morning, or staying up late for another video episode?
Ah, the classic streaming trap. A single suspenseful ending and suddenly a good night's sleep becomes completely optional. It's highly dangerous. A dramatic scene plays out and your entire sleep schedule gets thrown out the window.
So leave a comment below starting with the phrase, I keep, and finish the thought. For instance, I keep picking up my phone to check the schedule, but I end up browsing everything except the time. Or I keep hitting snooze and then rushing around like the clock is my enemy.
That last example feels incredibly relatable.
I know, right? Maybe a little too relatable. But seriously, we genuinely love reading your feedback. Now, let's get into it. Why do these undesirable habits feel incredibly powerful even when we know they aren't good for us?
I believe the immense frustration comes from the fact that we are fully aware. Nobody stays up past midnight eating snacks thinking it's a great health choice. We know better, yet we do it anyway, and then we carry that heavy guilt throughout the next morning.
Absolutely. And honestly, that heavy guilt is a massive part of the cycle because we immediately pivot to self-blame. We think, I have zero willpower. There's something wrong with me. But we completely overlook a much more productive inquiry. Why did this habit develop in the first place?
What do you mean by that?
Think about it this way. Most repetitive habits don't just appear out of nowhere. They generally started because they fulfilled a specific function for us. They offered comfort, an escape, a distraction, or a sense of relief.
At a particular point in your life, that specific habit might have actually served as a coping mechanism.
That's actually quite reassuring to hear, though slightly irritating because now I can't just be angry at my bad habits anymore. Exactly. You have to replace anger with curiosity. Let me share a personal situation. A couple of weeks ago, I found myself constantly wandering to the kitchen late at night. I wasn't genuinely hungry at all, but I kept doing it anyway.
What were you hoping to find?
To be completely honest, I think I was simply avoiding the act of going to bed. My mind was racing, and looking inside the cabinets was a way to stall. It wasn't a physical craving for food. It was inner restlessness searching for an outlet.
Wow, Mia, that hits home. Using the kitchen as a fix for a problem it can't actually fix.
And Leo, this brings us to a highly relevant concept, the word underlying. Every habit is driven by an underlying cause, something obscured beneath the surface that keeps the routine alive.
Could you clarify what underlying means in this context?
It refers to something hidden below the surface, much like the root system of a massive tree. When you observe a tree, you notice the trunk, the limbs, and the leaves, but underneath the soil, the roots are doing the essential work of keeping it standing, even if they remain invisible to you.
So the visible behavior is the tree, but the underlying necessity is the root system we tend to ignore.
Precisely. The behavior might be browsing the fridge, delaying your alarm multiple times, binge watching a series instead of resting, or reaching for your phone the millisecond you wake up. But beneath it all, the underlying need is often along the lines of, I'm overwhelmed, or I feel uneasy, or I just need a quiet moment that belongs entirely to me.
That last phrase, a quiet moment that belongs entirely to me, really resonates. And looking at English learners specifically, a student might avoid practicing speaking not because they're unmotivated or lazy. The underlying reason is often a desire for psychological safety. Speaking a new language makes you feel vulnerable. There's a risk of making an error and someone might notice. So reverting to your native language or deleting a comment isn't laziness. It's a mechanism for self-protection.
Spot on. The habit itself isn't the core issue, it's merely an indicator. If you never examine what it's trying to indicate, making a lasting shift is incredibly tough.
The habit is an indicator. I really like that phrasing. Okay, so the habit serves a function, but what occurs right before we execute it? Because sometimes it feels like it happens on autopilot.
Right, and that's the phase most individuals overlook entirely. There is always a distinct moment right before the action occurs. Always. A subtle pull, an internal sensation. We just react so rapidly that we jump straight over it.
Like your hand is already grabbing the object before your conscious mind can even join the conversation.
Exactly. And that internal pull, that specific feeling right before you act, is what we define as an urge.
An urge? Like a powerful craving?
Yes, an urge is a strong internal sensation driving you toward a particular action. It isn't the action itself yet, it's the physical or emotional tension right before, the itch before you actually scratch it.
Okay, so I might experience the urge to browse my phone, but I haven't physically picked it up yet.
Right. If you can catch yourself in that exact moment of experiencing the urge, you actually retain the power to choose. The issue is that we rarely pause there. The urge builds up, and we react so rapidly that it instantly transforms into an impulse.
Is an impulse distinct from an urge?
Very distinct. The urge is the internal wave growing inside you. An impulse is the lightning-fast reaction that takes place before your brain has time to evaluate the situation. It's like your hand executing a movement before your thoughts can form a sentence.
My thumb clearly operates under its own management team. It didn't consult me at all. The urge was barely registering, and my thumb had already browsed through 3 different apps.
That is the definition of an impulse. No discussion was held, no vote was taken, the action just materialized.
So the urge is the wave rising up, and the impulse is when you get swept away by the wave before realizing it was even there.
Exactly. And the tiny window between those two elements, the urge and the impulse, is where the magic happens. That brief pause is where real change becomes achievable, but you have to actively perceive it to take advantage of it.
True, and most people are never trained to notice it because it's rarely taught. This is highly relevant for language learners too. That exact second before you switch away from English or before you erase a voice note, there is an initial urge. It's usually a flash of discomfort, hesitation, or a pull toward what feels effortless. If you can learn to recognize that urge for just a split second, you build a buffer before the impulse takes over. And within that buffer, you regain your choice.
Within that buffer, you regain your choice. That's great, Leo. But what about the individuals who do notice? They spot the urge, attempt to fight it with pure willpower, declare, I am stopping this habit forever today, and somehow things end up worse.
Yes, that's a common trap because it sounds like the logical approach. Identify the issue, take a firm stand, and use absolute discipline. It sounds perfect, but here's the catch. When you push against a deeply ingrained habit with intense force, declaring, I will never do this again, starting right now, 0 exceptions, your mind can actually rebel.
Why does that happen?
Because sudden, massive changes feel like a threat to your subconscious. The brain prefers stability, and when it feels pressured, it generates resistance.
Resistance? Meaning it fights back against your plans?
Precisely. Resistance is that internal counterpush, the deep feeling of I don't want to do this when a new rule feels too strict, aggressive, or heavy. Imagine two people engaged in a game of tug-of-war. The harder you yank on your side of the rope, the harder the other side pulls back.
Ah, I see, Leo. So the moment I vow to never touch sugar again, my mind instantly becomes a brilliant lawyer defending the merits of chocolate cake.
A highly passionate lawyer with a complex presentation and data slides. Your Honor, my client, the fresh pastry, has been wrongfully accused. And the brain usually wins that argument because resistance becomes incredibly persuasive when you are exhausted or stressed out. Remember, the habit was already fulfilling an underlying need. If you banish it aggressively without offering an alternative, that underlying need is still there, screaming louder and louder.
So the habit returns with even greater force because you try to violently uproot it instead of replacing it gradually.
That's an excellent way to phrase it. Eliminating something by force without a substitute creates a psychological vacuum, and the old habit inevitably rushes back to fill the void. This occurs frequently with language learning, doesn't it? Someone decides, I must study complex grammar for 3 hours every single day and speak flawlessly. Suddenly, practicing English feels like an exhausting punishment.
And the moment it feels like a punishment, the brain triggers massive resistance. Not because the student dislikes the language, but because the self-imposed pressure is entirely too heavy. That resistance isn't a lack of discipline, it's an act of self-protection.
So being incredibly harsh on yourself isn't the same thing as true discipline.
Not at all. Discipline that triggers internal resistance isn't sustainable. It's just high pressure wearing a mask.
Okay, so we shouldn't fight blindly and we shouldn't use excessive force, but we obviously can't just do nothing. What is the actual solution?
The solution lies in gradual change, not sweeping transformations on a Monday morning, but shifts that are minor, repeatable, and practical.
Gradual as in slow?
Slow, systematic, and step by step. Gradual implies that you aren't trying to leap across a massive canyon in a single bound. You are constructing a fresh trail, one small step at a time.
But what does that look like in real life? Because gradual can sometimes sound a bit vague.
Fair point. Instead of promising, I will never look at my device in the morning again, you try, I am going to place my phone face down for the first 10 minutes after waking up. That is a singular, minor adjustment. It isn't terrifying or overwhelming, but it lays down a tiny new trail. You repeat it the following day and the day after that. Gradually, that new trail becomes clearer and much easier to navigate.
Think of walking through a dense forest with no existing path. The first time you walk through, branches hit your face, the ground is rough, and it's difficult. But as you walk that exact same line repeatedly, the ground naturally smoothens out onto your steps.
So the new routine is the developing trail, while the old habit is the broad, paved highway you've traveled thousands of times. You aren't trying to blow up the old highway. You are simply creating an alternative route for your brain to choose.
A gentle set of stairs rather than a steep cliff face.
Exactly. One step at a time. It doesn't demand anything intense. It simply offers a new direction. And this approach is incredibly beautiful for language learners. Writing just one English sentence a day might not feel impressive. Sending a 30-second voice note might not feel like serious studying. Using a single new phrase out loud feels almost too minor to matter.
But those exact minor actions form the new trail.
every single time you step on that trail, even for half a minute, it becomes more familiar and easier to locate the next time. We aren't demanding 2 hours of flawless study. We are simply looking for one sentence, one conscious moment, one small step forward.
And that is more than enough to keep the progress alive. That feels incredibly achievable. But to be totally transparent here, even when we take a gradual approach, even when we treat ourselves kindly, and even when we are doing great, we occasionally slip up. We revert back to old ways, and that specific moment can feel devastating.
Yes, and this is probably the most critical phase of our entire conversation, because slipping up is practically inevitable. It is going to happen.
It really is.
And when it does, when you hit snooze repeatedly after a solid week of waking up early, when you skip practicing your English for several days, or when you finish an entire season of a show after promising you'd watch just one episode, that is what we call a relapse.
Relapse? Isn't that a bit of a heavy clinical term for everyday habits?
It can sound a bit clinical, absolutely, but a relapse simply means sliding back into a previous behavior pattern after making genuine progress. It doesn't have to be a major disaster. It just means you are navigating the new trail and your foot accidentally stepped back onto the old highway.
And that specific moment feels incredibly discouraging.
It does, because our minds are experts at blowing a single slip-up completely out of proportion. We think, I've ruined everything. My streak is broken. It's pointless now, so I might as well just give up entirely. It's the classic logic of, well, I already ate one cookie, so I might as well eat the entire jar and clear out the kitchen.
The whole kitchen, exactly. And the danger is that this exact mindset transforms a minor slip-up into a massive, prolonged relapse. One missed practice session turns into a month of inactivity. One late night turns into a brand new bad routine. So the initial slip-up isn't the real problem. Your reaction to the slip-up is what dictates the outcome. And the standard reaction most people default to is shame. I'm so weak. I always fail. I'll never get this right. But shame, and this is vital to understand, actually feeds the habit and keeps it alive.
Wow, Mia, let's pause on that. Shame keeps the habit alive.
Think about it. When you feel completely miserable and full of shame after a relapse, what does your brain crave? It craves comfort, an escape, something to soothe that painful emotion, which is precisely what the bad habit was providing in the first place. So you run right back to the behavior to escape the guilt caused by the behavior.
So the shame loops you straight back into the very thing you feel bad about, which explains why how you respond after a setback is vastly more important than the setback itself. And the reaction that genuinely works is compassion.
Compassion directed at yourself, you mean?
Exactly, self-compassion. Compassion means offering kindness, empathy, and understanding to someone who is having a hard time, including the version of you that just stumbled. It doesn't mean saying, oh, it doesn't matter, do whatever you want. It means saying, okay, you stumbled. That's a completely normal part of the process. What do you need right now to get back on track? Gently.
That is a complete contrast to how the majority of people talk to themselves after a difficult day. Most individuals use a harsh, critical inner voice that they would never, ever use with a dear friend. They are incredibly brutal. They say things an encouraging coach would never dream of saying.
A supportive coach, not a harsh whip.
Exactly. A whip relies on fear and makes you feel small. A coach evaluates what went wrong, helps you analyze the situation, and says, all right, let's brush ourselves off and try again. For our English learners, missing a week of study doesn't wipe out your accumulated knowledge. Forgetting a specific word doesn't mean you lack talent. Making a grammatical slip during a live conversation doesn't mean you should give up speaking entirely. A relapse is just a brief moment in time. It isn't your identity. You simply stepped onto the old path for a second. The new trail is still right there waiting for you. You just turn around and step back on track. And you are fully allowed to be gentle with yourself during that turnaround.
Absolutely. Being gentle isn't a sign of weakness. It is the fundamental mechanism of how human beings actually transform their lives.
Beautifully said. So, if I synthesize everything we've discussed, bad habits aren't just character flaws. They stem from an underlying reason, fulfilling a necessity we still require. Before a habit takes over, there is an initial urge. If we fail to recognize that urge, the automatic impulse takes control. If we attempt to force massive changes too aggressively, our mind creates resistance, making the habit even more intense. Gradual substitution is far more effective than abrupt elimination. Small steps form the new trail. And whenever we experience a relapse, which is bound to happen, compassion is the key to restarting, never shame.
That's it. You've summarized the entire concept perfectly.
Look at that, Leo. It takes us a whole conversation to unpack what you just summarized in a few sentences.
Well, that's exactly why we have the conversation, to truly internalize and feel the concepts, not just hear them abstractly. My fingers are behaving incredibly well right now, though. I don't quite trust them yet.
Good. Keep a close eye on them because it's time for our word tour. And speaking of internalizing concepts, we've been using some highly practical terms throughout this episode. These are terms that are incredibly valuable, not just for analyzing habits, but for describing emotions, choices, and daily experiences.
In today's upgraded word tour, we aren't just going to give you a quick definition and wrap things up. We are going to slow down each term, examine its various grammatical forms, see how it functions inside authentic examples, and help you feel entirely comfortable integrating it into your speech. There is a massive difference between understanding a word when you hear it and feeling equipped to use it actively. This tour is designed to bridge that gap. Let's begin.
The Dopefully word tour. Let's start with a highly versatile word from our discussion today, underlying.
Underlying. This word allows us to describe something that is hidden or obscured beneath the surface of a situation.
Right. If an issue is underlying, it might not be immediately obvious, but it exerts a powerful influence. Let's practice the pronunciation together slowly. Underlying.
Underlying.
In our episode, we noted that an unwanted habit frequently has an underlying reason. The behavior is visible, but the underlying cause remains out of sight. For instance, the underlying reason for my constant screen time is stress, or the underlying issue isn't a lack of focus, it's a fear of failing.
That specific example is incredibly relevant for language students. A learner might express it like this: the underlying reason I hesitate to speak English is a fear of making mistakes. Grammatically, underlying functions as an adjective, so we almost always position it right before a noun. You will hear phrases like an underlying cause, an underlying problem, an underlying anxiety, or an underlying motivation.
So I shouldn't say the underlying reason is me.
No, definitely avoid that. The cause isn't physically sitting under your seat. You should say there is an underlying cause, or we need to identify the underlying problem. Instead of saying I don't know why I keep doing this, you can say there might be an underlying reason. It sounds incredibly sophisticated, thoughtful, and highly natural.
Moving on to our next word, urge. This refers to the internal sensation that precedes the action, correct?
Exactly. An urge is a powerful, sudden desire or impulse driving you to do something. Let's say it together clearly. Urge.
Urge.
You can experience an urge to browse social media, grab a sugary snack, delay waking up, or avoid an intimidating project. A very authentic sentence structure is, I felt a sudden urge to check my messages, or I had a powerful urge to eat something chocolate.
For our English learners, you could say, I felt a strong urge to switch back to my native language during the discussion, or I had an urge to delete my comment before anyone could read it. In these contexts, urge operates as a noun. Common collocations include to feel an urge, to have an urge, to resist an urge, or to fight an urge.
Can urge also function as a verb?
Yes, it can, but the definition shifts slightly. As an action word, to urge means to strongly encourage or advise someone to take action. For instance, my instructor urged me to speak without worrying about perfection, or we urge you to practice one sentence every day. But for today's topic regarding habits, using it as a noun is incredibly valuable.
Right. The urge is that internal magnetic pull, that quiet whisper saying, just open one email, and before you know it, you're distracted. So instead of saying, I suddenly wanted to do it, elevate your vocabulary by saying, I felt an urge. It's elegant, precise, and highly practical.
Now, let's analyze the word impulse. This term is closely related to urge, so let's clarify the exact boundary between them. The urge is the emotional or physical sensation. The impulse is the rapid, unthinking action or sudden drive before you have time to logically deliberate. Let's practice it together. Impulse.
Impulse.
A great everyday sentence is, I bought this jacket on impulse. That specific phrase has definitely done some damage to my savings account.
Mine too, without a doubt. You can also say, I acted on impulse. This means you took action incredibly fast without evaluating the consequences. A language learner might say, I erased my English post on impulse because I felt insecure, or I left the English chat room on impulse when it was my turn to speak. It sounds incredibly natural.
What about the word impulsive?
Great point. Impulsive is the adjective form, so you can say, that was an impulsive purchase, or I tend to be impulsive when I'm exhausted. And the adverb form is impulsively. For example, I impulsively closed the textbook. That basically sums up my entire college experience.
Perfect. So remember the structural patterns. I did something on impulse. I acted on impulse. It was an impulsive move. I reacted impulsively. And the golden rule we discussed: if you can identify the urge, you can intercept the impulse.
Next up on our list, resistance. This is that internal feeling of pushing back, right?
Yes, resistance is the psychological or physical opposition to something. Let's pronounce it together carefully. Re-sis-tense.
Resistance.
In our conversation, we highlighted how resistance builds up when a plan is too rigid or aggressive. A very natural sentence would be, I encountered a lot of internal resistance when I tried to reinvent my entire routine overnight. Or, setting unrealistic goals always creates intense resistance.
For anyone mastering English, this vocabulary is incredibly beneficial. You can say, I feel massive resistance whenever I force myself to memorize vocabulary for hours. Or, demanding perfection from yourself generates resistance to speaking. That's a vital realization. If you think you must be flawless, you'll eventually experience so much resistance that you stop trying.
Now, resistance is the noun form. The adjective form is resistant. For example, my mind is highly resistant to sudden disruptions. Or, students can become resistant to learning when it feels like an obligation. And the verb form is to resist. For instance, I managed to resist the urge to check my phone for a whole hour.
A whole hour. Truly heroic, Mia.
I try my best. So we have the family of words: resist, resistant, resistance. The key takeaway here is that experiencing resistance doesn't mean you are lazy. It often indicates that your current strategy is simply too heavy.
Now let's look at an essential word for sustainable transformation: gradual. Gradual means occurring slowly, systematically, or in small increments, rather than all at once. Let's practice saying it. Gradual.
Gradual.
A very practical sentence is, true habit modification needs to be gradual. Or, I noticed a gradual improvement in my listening comprehension. That is an excellent phrase for language learners. Gradual progress describes development that unfolds steadily over a period of time, which is exactly how language fluency is built.
Right, it doesn't happen overnight through a single marathon study session. It's all about gradual progress. You can say, my conversational confidence developed gradually. In this case, gradually is the adverb form, so gradual modifies nouns and gradually modifies actions.
For example, it was a gradual transition versus my pronunciation shifted gradually. You can also use the phrase to take a gradual approach. This means avoiding massive sudden adjustments and choosing to start small.
So no more declaring, I am going to become a completely flawless English speaker by Friday morning.
Please don't do that to yourself. Give your mind some peace. For a language learner, a gradual approach means focusing on one phrase a day or recording one brief audio snippet, something small enough that you can easily replicate it daily. So instead of complaining, I'm not making any headway, try framing it as, my development is gradual. It shows patience, and patience is a superpower in language acquisition.
Next, let's look at relapse. This term can sound a bit intense, Leo.
It can certainly carry a serious tone, but in everyday practical English, a relapse simply means slipping back into a former, less desirable habit after a period of improvement. Let's practice the pronunciation. Relapse.
Relapse.
A very common natural way to use it is, I had a minor relapse and started snacking late at night again. Or, during a highly demanding week, he relapsed into his old routine of skipping sleep. Relapse is unique because it functions perfectly as both a noun and a verb.
So we can say a relapse and also to relapse.
Exactly. I experienced a relapse uses it as a noun. I relapsed under pressure uses it as a verb. For our language learners, you could apply it like this. I relapsed into my old habit of staying silent during meetings. Or after taking a vacation, I relapsed into not practicing at all. But we must emphasize to our listeners that a relapse is not a definitive failure.
Absolutely. A relapse simply means you temporarily stepped onto the old path. It doesn't mean the new path has vanished. That is a crucial distinction. If you miss a week of practicing English, your hard work isn't erased. If you forget a vocabulary word during a chat, your journey hasn't reset to zero. You just pause, turn around, and step back on track. So instead of telling yourself, I failed completely, try saying, I had a brief relapse, but I'm moving forward again. It's honest, constructive, and filled with hope.
And our final vocabulary word for today is compassion. This is an absolute necessity for anyone navigating personal growth. Compassion is the quality of showing deep kindness, empathy, and understanding towards someone who is facing a challenge or making a mistake. Let's say it slowly. Compassion.
Compassion.
Throughout this episode, we focused heavily on directing compassion inward, toward yourself. Self-compassion means offering yourself grace when you stumble or fall short. A beautiful sentence to practice is, I need to extend more compassion to myself when I make errors. Or, practicing self-compassion allowed me to rebuild my routine after a setback.
That is a wonderful concept. Now, compassion is the noun form. The adjective form is compassionate. For instance, try to be compassionate with yourself as you learn. Or she offered me a highly compassionate response. Can we also use an adverb form?
Yes, compassionately is the adverb. For example, he spoke compassionately about his struggles, or aim to view your mistakes compassionately. That is a transformative sentence for language students. When you make a structural or grammar error, you can simply note it and correct it without launching into a harsh internal critique.
Exactly. Compassion isn't a cop-out or an excuse to stop trying. It isn't saying, I don't care about improving. It's saying, I made a mistake. That's part of being human, and I have the capacity to keep going. A supportive coach, never a harsh whip. The coach helps you stand back up. The whip just makes you terrified to move. So instead of berating yourself with, my English is awful, reframe it compassionately. I am in the middle of learning, and I can correct this mistake with patience. That is exactly the type of language and mindset we champion here at Doubly English.
And that brings us to the conclusion of today's word tour. We want to hear from you now. Head down to the comments section and tell us which specific word from today's episode you plan to integrate into your vocabulary first. Try writing just one brief sentence using that word. That is your perfect bite-sized practice for the day.
And remember, even a single short sentence is a massive win for your progress. Take care of your English journey, and most importantly, take care of yourself. This is Mia.
And this is Leo. Thank you so much for spending your time with us on the Doubly English podcast. Until next time, happy learning. Bye-bye.
The music fades in and sweeps up. Your learning journey doesn't have to stop here. To keep elevating your English conversational skills, select the next episode or dive into the curated collection of videos we've put together just for you. See you there.